Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Christian Guru-murthy, and this is the podcast in which we talk to people about their ideas and the events that have helped shape them. This week, I've been talking to Channel 4's Rachel Riley, the co-host of Countdown. She's celebrating 10 years on the show this week. Now, we know Rachel from Strictly Come Dancing and football coverage and quiz shows, but she didn't come in to talk about any of that. Instead, she wanted to do her first big serious interview about something that's almost taken over her life, in public at least, for the last few months, and that's an argument she's been having about anti-Semitism and the Labour Party. Now, we should say from the outset that Jeremy Corbyn denies anything to do with anti-Semitism or encouraging it, and the Labour Party has now adopted a recognised definition of anti-Semitism. This is my conversation with Rachel. So where did this start?
It started, I mean, the first time I was aware of it was when there was the protest outside Parliament, which was, I think, about March 2018. And, you know, lots of angry Jews with placards and rabbis and MPs, and something that, you know, I hadn't heard of until then, which made me think, you know, Jews complaining about anti-Semitism in 2018, this is a bit odd. So I started looking into it. And the more I saw over the months, I mean, I had moments where my mouth was on the floor at the kind of Holocaust denial and all the old-fashioned anti-Semitic tropes.
This is on Twitter you're talking about?
On social media, yeah. And I'd get dribs and drabs and, you know, a little bit through the press and here and there. And I'd sometimes see something online and David Baddiel had tweeted something and I'd get angry and write a tweet and then delete it because I thought, you know, I watch the American political shows and you see things about Brexit and you see things that annoy you, and I don't feel like I need to put them into the world because it feels like they're obvious. So what's the point of adding another angry tweet and it doesn't do anything?
Because you're not political.
No,
on Twitter,
no,
generally, are you?
No, I mean,
you're not the Gary Lineker of
no,
Channel 4.
My Twitter's full of, you know, helping kids with maths homework, rude words on Countdown, and talking about Man United. And eventually, I think I'd been away in the summer, I got back on my way to Countdown, and I'd just kind of seen the encroachment of just more and more negative stories about Jews. So they were either victims or aggressors or smearers or complaining and, you know, just negative things. And I was on Countdown, and Susie Dent did an Origin of Words about the origin of the word breadline. And she talked about a baker who was from Hungary, went to New York, saw some homeless people over the road from his bakery by a grate, a heat vent, staying there to be warm, and he realised they were hungry and homeless, and this baker gave them some bread. And I heard the name of this baker, and I thought, well, my Judah kind of went off. I was like, this sounds like a Jewish immigrant to America. And he eventually, the bread line came up because people that needed food would queue up outside of his bakery all night long, and he would give them bread, and he would give them coffee when it was cold. And if they didn't eat the bread immediately, he would have them follow back to their home so he could give more bread to feed their families. And I thought, that's such a lovely story. I just want to put some positivity out there. I don't want to complain about something. I just want to put a nice story into the world. So I did a tweet and I said, who knew there was such a lovely story about the word breadline? Of course, Susie Dent did. Bloody Jews again. And then the link to this story. And I put bloody Jews again because I didn't want to spoon feed people the story. I wanted them to click on it and see what it was about. And what I found from that one tweet was that I got called anti-Semite.
For Bloody Jews Again?
From Bloody Jews Again, from people not clicking the link to see that my Bloody Jews Again is Jews helping their community and doing something nice. That's my Bloody Jews Again, and I just wanted the people to see this story. And it taught me two things. It taught me that people don't read anything. They can't even be able to click a link in an article, in a tweet to see what you're talking about before calling you an anti-Semite. And it told me that people don't understand anti-Semitism because me just using the term Bloody Jews Again meant that I was an anti-Semite. And I remember on that particular week on my way home from Countdown, I was on the train and I'd seen that across London, I think it was 7 bus stops, had been plastered with the posters, "Israel is a racist endeavour." And that offends me as a Jew. I brought up with the notion that Israel is somewhere where Jews can have a safe place where they aren't going to be persecuted. And that was my kind of basic knowledge of what Israel was about. Nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with what's going on, wars, Palestinians, civil human rights, anything like that. Just the fact that it exists. And I kind of seen this encroaching into general conversation with people banding around things like this. And I did another tweet. This is what Jeremy Corbyn is inspiring. And I think Gordon Brown had said something that you would hope a politician would have said about standing with the Jewish community and combating anti-Semitism on the same week. So I did, this is what Gordon Brown is saying, this is what Jeremy Corbyn is inspiring. And the level of hate and vitriol and abuse I got back from that one tweet was shocking. Was shocking. I'm not political, so I hadn't dealt with the Corbyn, it's not everybody. Not everybody that supports Jeremy Corbyn has these views, but I think it's known that he has a certain following, that you can't say anything against him without being shut down.
But if you say Jeremy Corbyn inspires anti-Semitism,
I didn't say he inspires anti-Semitism. I said this is what he's saying is inspiring, because it was to do with the International Holocaust Remembrance Association definition of anti-Semitism, which again I'd never heard of until Labour decided they didn't want to take it up. And I think that the messaging with, being not putting that kind of thing in the definition that's been accepted by so many other organisations doesn't just say maybe it stifles criticism, or maybe it's not anti-Semitic. It gives a message to a lot of people that that's the right position to take.
Okay, there's quite a lot to unpack here. Let's sort of rewind a little bit. In terms of your own Jewish identity, I suppose one of the reasons people may have misconstrued your initial tweet was because most people wouldn't know you're Jewish. So what is your own Jewish identity? Where does it come from?
Well, it's like, probably line 1 or line 2 of my Wikipedia entry. I've not spoken about being Jewish. My surname's Riley. You wouldn't know. I don't look like a typical Jew or anything like that. But I've always been open. My mum's Jewish and my dad's Man United, and that's my identity. I'm an atheist. But I'm proud of my heritage. When we have the family round, my mum would do a lovely Bible spread with all the Ashkenazi, the food. I called my granddad my Zayda. We would go to shul once a year for Yom Kippur for prayers for the dead.
But you didn't, as a family, observe the Sabbath or go to Jewish festivals?
Nothing like that. Not religious Jews. Just cultural. Not even cultural particularly, but I guess part of my Jewish identity is I've known about the Holocaust forever. It's been always been on my radar, and knowing that it doesn't matter about your religion, it doesn't matter what you believe, it doesn't matter what you do. Having one Jewish grandparent people felt entitled to be able to murder you, and that has been part of my Jewish identity for a long time. And I thought, like many others did, that something like the Holocaust meant that anti-Semitism wouldn't exist anymore, because you can see where it leads, you can see how bad it is, you can see what kind of people purport anti-Semitism.
Did you grow up in a Jewish community at all?
No,
in a Jewish area?
I'm from Essex, so my mum originally is from Ilford Wanstead, where a lot of, Brick Lane, I think that's where my family went when they came to England in the late 1800s. Then they moved out to Hamlet Court Road, where a load of Jews went in Westcliff. The one Jewish girl at my school, my other friend, Muslim girl, and we were kind of like the ones that didn't say Jesus when you did the hymns and things like that.
And did you suffer any discrimination or racism, or you weren't called names as a kid or anything like that?
Never, not on my radar.
So is your Jewish identity now something that's kind of very much developing?
It is.
Through what's happened
over the
last few months, and this is something you're more conscious of now than you perhaps were.
Margaret Hodge, the MP who came out and actually called Jeremy Corbyn an anti-Semite, she did a speech, and she said, my school, I didn't even have this experience. She said, my school tried to make me a Jew. My dad tried to make me a Jew. My rabbi tried to make me a Jew. They all failed. Jeremy Corbyn has made me a Jew. And this is the thing, that so many people that they don't practice Judaism. Ruth Meath, she said the same thing. She was a high holidays Jew, and now it's kind of, she's a Jew. That's all she is, and she gets rape threats.
The Jewish Labour MP Ruth Meath,
and death threats because of it. When I talk about it, the level of abuse and, ironically, anti-Semitism I get with people telling me they're not anti-Semitic, I want to highlight that. And this has been happening to so many people in quiet. They're being abused. I know one instance of suicide attempt. I know one instance of violence against them. And it's not got the platform. And it shouldn't be allowed to happen in Britain in 2019 without people knowing about it. This should be a national scandal.
Let's just go back to what it is you're talking about.
Yeah.
What it is that motivated you and what upsets you from what you've seen. What are the sorts of comments you're talking about?
There's the mistaken belief that you can say anything you like about Israel, Zionists, Jews, which are often mixed up, and that's fine. And this is a really complicated situation, and over and over and over we're having to say, you can criticise Israel. Of course you can. Plenty of Jews criticise Israel the same way you criticise, I don't stand for everything our government does, but I don't hate everyone in England for something that the government does. It's insane, and the amount of I think being scared to talk about Zionism or Israel or whatever is it's limiting the conversation. So
give me some examples.
So Zionism, the actual meaning of Zionism is the belief that Jews should be allowed to have self-determination in their own country. And I'm frequently people are saying I'm anti-Zionist, which some people are using it wrongly. It's just there's a lot of ignorance out there, but a lot of people are saying they don't want Jews to exist when they say that, and that's being allowed to happen.
Right, but this is a very key part of the argument, because people say it is not anti-Semitic to be anti-Zionist.
Yes.
And Israel now, the Israeli government and the Israeli ambassador who came on the podcast, take a position which is effectively saying now, if you are anti-Zionist, you are an anti-Semite.
I personally believe, if you are anti-Zionist in the true meaning of what Zionism is, I don't understand in this day and age how you cannot be anti-Semitic. You can criticise Israel, you can be anti-Israel, you can be, or specifically anti-Israeli government. And if you're using that term wrongly, which I completely understand, a lot of this is just people using terms wrongly, not knowing what they're talking about. But there are people that are saying, I don't think Israel should be allowed to exist. It's a racist state. I don't understand how you can say that without being anti-Semitic, because that was the idea of Zionism for most Jews. I think 90 to 93% of British Jews see Israel as some part of their identity, and it's a place where that can't happen again. It's you can't be chucked out of a country, and people might think it's hyperbolic, but this has happened century after century after century to Jews in countries where they're not the majority.
But as you know, people on the other side will say, it is not racist to believe that Israel shouldn't exist, because all I'm saying is, they, not me, is it was wrong to displace the Palestinians. We should go back to a pre-1948 situation, and that means the modern state of Israel doesn't exist. That doesn't make me hate, I'm not hating a people, I'm not hating Jews, I'm just saying that state, is an unjust state, and we should go back to something before it exists. What's wrong with that for you?
It's quite difficult, because at this stage, Israel does exist. So what's the solution there? And at the time when Israel was created, it's difficult because I don't want to talk about Israel. A lot of this it's just blatant anti-Semitism, but you get drawn into these conversations, and again, I'm having to have so much knowledge that I didn't have before to combat it. But Israel does exist. At the time, it was supported by so many countries and so many, it was supported by...
So we are where we are.
It was supported by Russia, it was supported by socialists, it was supported by Britain. The politics post-67, I'm not interested particularly. I don't have to be. I don't have a responsibility as a Jew. I went for a day when I was 13.
For a day?
It was a day trip. A day trip, yeah. My connection to Israel is like I say, the notion that Jews should have a place where they're not going to be able to be chucked out and they're not going to be able to be murdered. Politics of Israel and the government, I really don't want to get involved.
That's a very difficult thing, though, isn't it? Because
it's very difficult.
Israel is essentially, politics. It is politics. It's the definition of politics, because there is a daily struggle there.
Yeah.
Again, if you haven't been to Israel, then it's difficult to talk about it. But the reason people on the other side, again, will say, there is a racist element to the modern state of Israel is because the rights of Palestinians are not necessarily the same. The constitution has been changed.
It depends.
All of those sorts of things. So, it's always difficult, isn't it, to say, I don't want to get into the politics of Israel.
It is.
But I do want to say, if you don't believe Israel should exist, you're anti-Semite.
And it's difficult. So I don't really want to be dragged into the the conflict. And I don't think you have to pick sides of pro-Israel, pro-Palestinian. I think you can, I consider myself a nice person. I want everyone to be able to live without being killed. But to deny the facts of one side, it's not going to help the peace process. It's not going to help the Palestinian cause. I mean, there was a programme, We Are British Jews, last year, and in the last 10 minutes of that, they had, and this is the only thing I really want to say about Israel and Palestine, they had an Israeli man and a Palestinian man who both had daughters murdered. And they're mates, they're friends, and they both just said, we just want this to stop. Whatever both sides are doing, we just want this to stop. And that's the only position I think any right-minded person can have. But the problem with this is, you can't say anything you like, and you can't lie with impunity. I'm not saying everything. This is so nuanced, and this is why I want to be able to have a conversation with someone rather than 280 characters that can be taken apart. It just because something's bad doesn't mean it's not complicated, and just because you feel empathy for Palestinians, of course you should, but doesn't mean that every British Jew has to answer to it, and doesn't mean every time I talk about anti-Semitism or Holocaust denial or fraternising with terrorists means I have to have a position on everything people say about Israel.
Right. I mean, this has obviously sort of unlocked something very deep and emotional in you. Mm-hmm. So how did those initial messages that you read make you feel? I mean, did they make you feel threatened? I've
soul-searched a lot. I've soul-searched so much because so many people are telling you that, you're wrong and you're evil or whatever, and you're like, am I missing something? So I've had to do so much research and to find out where this has come from, and really examine myself to see, am I a blinkered? Have I come from, this upbringing, and this is why I think this? So it's just made me question things, which I think is good. You have to question things. You have to look at both sides. You have to read, listen. But
so do you think it's what you were reacting to, or the reaction to you, that has made you feel this?
What's made me, which depends which part.
I suppose, what I'm saying is, the way you feel about this now, mm-hmm. and what's motivated you to get involved and to take all comers on Twitter and go and speak about it in Parliament and do this interview, is that because of the reaction to you?
No.
Or is it because what's underlying?
It's because there are so many people, like I say, they've given up their lives. That I was invited to Parliament went 3 times in the last couple of months of 2018 for a conference, for the reception after the Sarah conference, which is a conference against anti-Semitism and misogyny, which is a cross-party group. And at each event, I've met people who are in effect by themselves, that are experiencing day-to-day anti-Semitism, and that are scared. They are genuinely scared. I met Luciana Berger at a mental health event, and she said, "Thank you for speaking out." I've maybe done 1 or 2 tweets at that point, and I said, "Is it as bad? Is it bad?" And the look in the eyes when you get the answer, yes. It's not just online hate. It's not just Twitter trolls. I'm used to Twitter trolls. I mean, I've been in telly. This is my 10th year. I'm a football fan. You're going to get Twitter trolls. This is different. This is affecting people's lives. And when you hear the stories from victims, and even now, I've been in this deeply for a few months now, and even now I'm hearing stories, and it's like, how have I not heard this? This is such a huge part of the story. How have I not heard this?
Why is Jeremy Corbyn so responsible in your mind?
I think the responsibility, first of all, it has to lie at the top for any corporation, any structural, any group, any organisation. He has chaired an event on Holocaust Memorial Day called Never Again from Auschwitz to Gaza. He has shared platforms with terrorists who are, and then the debate about who's a terrorist comes up, and it's, well, they're classified as terrorists by the US, by the UK, by the EU. He's sharing platforms with these people. He's giving a legitimate voice to Holocaust denial, and it's surely you can have compassion and fight for the Palestinian cause without sharing your bed with Holocaust deniers and virulent anti-Semites. And every day I'm on Twitter, I'm told I'm a liar, I'm smearing, I've not given any evidence. And these comments are at the bottom of a thread of evidence.
But the defence to what you say is sharing a platform is him engaging with people who he doesn't
I do know that
necessarily
defence.
agree
Yeah,
with.
but I mean, Dave Rich, I went to a speech by Dr. Dave Rich, who's one of the leading experts in anti-Semitism. He did a PhD on the history of anti-Semitism on the left 10 years ago or so, thinking it would just be a niche thing, no one would be interested. By the time he finished it, this was happening and it's topical. I love his quote. He said, if Jeremy Corbyn's anti-racist, he's the unluckiest anti-racist in history because he frequently shares platforms with these people. He did misrepresent what happened or change his story with the whole laying a wreath at the graves of terrorists, and we know what actually happened because he wrote about it himself in the Morning Star. And the thing is, when the senior members of the Labour Party say this is a smear and spend so long getting to grips with it and not dealing with it, people listen to this.
So given that reaction that you've had, your reaction has been speak louder, speak more, engage with it more.
If good people stay quiet, then all you're hearing is the extremist voices. And that can't happen because then the appearance is that this is what everybody thinks. And actually, with all this, so many people have been fantastic and shown their support, so many people, and I can't thank them enough for actually voicing their support. And I know from meeting people in the street that there are so many more that don't say anything, that are the silent majority that feel the same. But I think, the voices of these extremists are so loud that that's the perception that everybody thinks like this. And actually, we need to say, no, this isn't the only way to think. This isn't the only moral viewpoint. It's scary and it's a sad state of affairs where you have to be brave to speak out against anti-Semitism. And very quickly I lost that because I knew I was going to get abuse. I know every time I post something I'm going to get abuse. But at the heart of it, it's a very, very sad state of affairs that you have to be brave to call out anti-Semitism in the UK in 2019.
Does it make you afraid for yourself?
There are some extremists in amongst this who I've learnt some words that I didn't know through this doxing. They share people's addresses. If you know your address, I don't know if they could find me. I don't know if they could find my parents. Obviously, I'm in the public eye, so I do a lot of public appearances. It's a risk. It's a risk. But I personally consider the rise in this more dangerous than to be able to not speak out.
What do your family say? Do they say, Rachel, just don't go on about this? Don't make yourself a target. Don't caught the controversy.
No, they're great. I mean, I think people know that you kind of have to do this. I mean, you don't want to go on about the Holocaust all the time, but it is something that's formed part of my identity, and you see how sad it was, and you see how, the old adage is if good people stay quiet, then that's all you need for evil to succeed. And I'm not saying people are evil, but I'm just saying that these ideas are spreading, and anti-Semitism is at its heart a conspiracy theory. It says that the Jews are pulling the strings of the capitalist. They're capitalist and the arch communist at the same time, and they've caused these wars, and they control the media and they control banking, and you can hear these things and think, oh, there's a grain of truth in that, and not realise that it's actually come from Soviet propaganda, Nazi propaganda. So a lot of this, I don't hate people that think these things at all. I think that a lot of it's education. I've educated myself a lot on this recently. Just because I'm Jewish doesn't mean I know anything. And just because you think you're a good person doesn't mean you can't unwittingly buy into anti-Semitic stuff. So I think a lot more education is needed.
What do you want to do about this now? Because you're sort of out there now, as sort of a Twitter campaigner, almost. And it's odd because it is just sort of essentially on social media that you're fighting this fight. So what do you want to do?
I want a light shone on it. I mean, a lot of campaigners that have got into this kind of sometimes in a similar way that I have, they're being discredited with people online saying that they are right-wing extremists, they are fascists, they're Tories, even paedophiles. And I want to add my voice because, as you said, this week is my 10-year anniversary on Countdown. People know me. They don't know me as a Jew. They don't know me as a politician. Hopefully, I'm hoping that I've banked enough credit over 10 years of being me, supporting maths, girls in education, charity as animals to say that this is a serious problem. It's affecting people's daily lives, and it needs to stop, and it needs leadership to stop it. If people are doing this in the name of Jeremy Corbyn, he needs to stop it. I mean, personally, I don't think he has enough credibility with the Jewish community anymore to draw this back. But somebody needs to take responsibility for this. There are some amazing people in Labour and other cross-party, projects trying to combat this, but they are in the minority, and other people are scared to speak up because this is what happens. So I want people to be louder. That's the only thing. I normally, when I'm doing a campaign or a charity work or whatever, I'm a mathematician. I like structure. I like to do something, to have a goal. And at the moment, I want people to be louder. If you see something, call it out. Wherever it is, I don't care wherever it is in society. If you see something that's possibly an anti-Semitic trope or comment or could be wrong, question it.
So be louder is the hashtag.
Be louder, question things. If someone gives you a fact or a stat or a meme, find the source. I mean, it's going back to, year 7 history lessons. It's like, thank you, Mrs. Mansell, South End girls. Check your sources. If there are different sources that are against each other in every other way but say the same thing, that's likely to be true. I mean, Holocaust denial, how is that happening in 2019? The Russians, the Brits, the Nazis themselves, Germans, victims of the Holocaust all have the same account, which matches the remains of buildings, of documents. How this is can be contested in this day and age, I don't know, but we need to use more critical thinking.
But do you think there are many of them out there?
Many.
Or the anti-Semites and Holocaust deniers that you're talking about? Or are they just a very vocal minority
that's hard.
Who are driving you nuts?
That's really hard to tell. I mean, from the CST, they do studies, and it is a minority. But as I say, 30% of people will believe one stereotype about the Jews. That rises to people who openly identify as anti-Israel. It rises to 74%.
Are you an unlikely campaigner?
I mean, I've been told I'm doing this for my career. I mean, it's got to be probably the the easiest way to career suicide I could imagine, talking about something so controversial. So in that way, yes. I mean, it's not a good career move to have my Twitter full of hate and abuse and to be so confrontational. I mean, previous to this,
What are your bosses saying?
I don't know. I'll have to ask them. Nothing yet. But I mean, there've been many people on Twitter tagging in Channel 4, tagging in Nick Hewitt, tagging in Susie Dent, saying I'm bringing them all into disrepute, and I've had nothing but support from Susie and Nick. They've heard me talk about this a lot at work. Nick's a lifelong Labour fan, and he's got my back. Like, it's really heartening, and it's I'm not doing this to bring down Jeremy Corbyn. I'm not doing this to bring down Labour. Because they're Jeremy Corbyn or because they're Labour. I want anti-Semitism combated. I hope this won't take the rest of my life. I hope I can, at some stage...
Is this becoming the one issue? Because obviously there are so many things that Britain and the world are divided over at the moment, Brexit or whatever it might be. I mean, do these other things also exercise you? Or is this kind of all-consuming for you at the moment?
At the moment, it's all-consuming because I'm being sent all these awful stories, and I want to highlight them. I don't want them to be brushed under the carpet, and I won't be silenced just because I'm being abused or because I'm being slurred or told I'm stupid or worthless. Or I've had everything from a troll sent me a picture of little children in striped pajamas at a concentration camp this week. It's ludicrous, and when you see how far from reality these people are, and how many likes and shares and little groups of people all agreeing with each other there are, I mean, you just have to call it out. I can't not call it out. I'm not saying that there's a Holocaust coming, but it doesn't have to be a Holocaust to be able to try and nip this in the bud, because any form of anti-Semitism or any form of racism is wrong, and this is the one that I know about, and this is the one I'm being abused about at the moment. I hope this will be shut down, and if you'd have said to me this time last year I'll be on celebrating my 10-year anniversary on Countdown by talking about anti-Semitism, I would have thought you're insane. But it has given me more insight into what it is like to be abused for your race, right, religion, whatever. Which I didn't. I know I felt empathy before, but I didn't feel the same like stuff going through my blood, the same punch to the stomach, the same physical sickness as when people tell me that I'm abusing my race and abusing the victims of the Holocaust by calling it anti-Semitism. And now I feel that. I hope I can do something for someone else when this is hopefully done.
Well, let's come to Countdown then, which bizarrely we haven't spoken about all interview. Because, I mean, this was a job that kind of came out of nowhere from an audition.
Yeah.
For you after university.
Yep, straight after uni.
What does Countdown mean to you now?
Oh, God. I mean, 10 years has gone, it feels like, forever and nothing at the same time. I mean, it is a family. I love it. I love the team. I love the maths. I love the view. I just love it. It's fun. It's not like a job. I
suppose what I mean is what role is it in your life? Because to some people, your role on Countdown is this sort of anachronistic role. You are the glamorous assistant still. Is that how you see yourself?
Well, I think, the maths is always the bit that it's my favourite bit, and I know I've got a master's in maths from Oxford, and I used to watch it as a kid, and I love puzzles, and I'm just doing arithmetic. Of course, I'm just doing arithmetic, but I'm kind of using that to go in and talk to kids about job opportunities and what mathematicians are doing and what scientists are doing, and trying to use it to. I mean, I think you become a bit of a role model whether you want to or not when you're on telly, when you're doing something, and I would rather be a role model for kids doing in maths and science, and especially girls. Than nice dress and bit of lip gloss. But
is there a quid pro quo for you on what you knew they expected from the role, and your place on the show?
Well, it's stereotypes. It's I often when I'm doing a job and I get asked, you're being a mathematician, can you please wear a white lab coat? No, I'm a mathematician. I like dresses. I like makeup. Mathematicians do. Mathematicians can. I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes, and I think it's about seeing someone maybe that you relate to, or that came from Essex, or that went to a regular school, or whatever. You can achieve something. You need, as girls. I think last year had a big effect on me, being 100 years since suffrage, since the women first won the vote, and hearing the history and hearing how women weren't allowed to vote, they weren't allowed to own things, and even now you get, scientists at CERN saying that physics is a male thing. That's a load of rubbish. You have to learn your history. It's the same thing. If women weren't allowed to get education, they weren't allowed to get degrees, they weren't allowed to have jobs, then of course they're not going to do science. And you need more female role models, and you need to highlight them, celebrate them, tell girls that, you can be emotional and you can be a scientist, and it's not, just old white guys in lab coats and beards that are doing this. If you want to do it, you do it.
But is it possibly true that yes, you look and act the way you want to look and act on Countdown, but that's probably not how it was conceived, especially when Carol Vorderman was doing it as well. The way television is, it's show business. It was a male-run industry. Countdown was the first show on Channel 4, and that role was conceived of as, let's get a pretty, clever woman to be the sidekick for the old man who runs the show.
Poor old Nick.
And well, I was talking about Richard Whiteley, but when the show first came on, and so there's isn't there still an element of that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm there to be the maths expert. Whatever I look like doesn't really bother me. I mean, I'm not going to change it. I think that's the thing you see. Even it's in society. I hosted the Young Women's Engineer of the Year Awards, and they had 6 young girls, and they did a video about it. And I thought, oh, it's a shame, they got some models in to do this video. And they weren't models. They were just 6 young girls who are engineers, and they're doing their videos of how they're, plugging things in. I'm not an engineer, to get BT Sport up and running and broadcast the football. And it's a lovely blonde girl from Kent with sparkly nails. It doesn't matter what you look like. Mathematicians, whatever, come in all shapes and sizes. I'm not going to change my look, change who I am, change how I, whatever. I am who I am. If I'm a woman and I'm young and I like dresses, then you have to suck it up. Because
there was an article a few years ago in The Guardian by another scientist talking about you as a role model in STEM subjects, saying, well, you're not a good role model because you make her, as an accomplished scientist, feel inadequate because you're slim and pretty.
You know what? She didn't say I wasn't a good role model. She just said that it made her feel inferior. And I think that's the thing. Women, it's all about perceptions of ourselves. That's what holds us back. And once we're aware of it, we can combat it. So, trying to get more women as CEOs, they did a study and they found that when a man reads an application form for a job, he needs about 50 to 60% of the criteria to tick before he applies for that job. With a woman, she feels like she needs 100%. And she's not going for it. So it's just about the perceptions of we see ourselves, especially with maths and science. You think it's it's for Einstein, it's for Newton, it's for me. I'm held as a maths whiz. No, it's for normal people. You don't have to get everything right all the time. And that's just another way that women we bash ourselves with. It's it's just overcoming perceptions and realizing where they come from, and then ignoring them.
How do you think the entertainment industry's treated you?
I mean, who's the entertainment industry?
British television.
I'm enjoying it. I've had amazing opportunities. I've got to do things with Manchester United, which I'd have given my right arm for. I still would. When I was a kid. It gives you opportunities you never would have dreamed of. And I took the job thinking, well, this could be rubbish. I've never been near a TV studio in my life. If it all goes tits up, I'll still have a maths degree and I'll go back to doing whatever I was going to do. And thankfully, with the support of the Countdown team and my agents who I've had since day one, they've been absolutely incredible. They've given me good guidance, good advice, and I've hopefully built a career that's it's 10 years in now. Hopefully, it will last a little bit longer.
And how much sexism do you think you've encountered? Because it's strange, because your career went from sort of 0 to 100 pretty much overnight, because you went on to this massive show that was very well established, and was newspaper fodder already. And so you became very high profile very quickly.
Yeah, I have experienced it actually, and it's only hearing from other women's experiences where you get to see it. So I did one job. And when I started it, I was green, I was new, I'd listen, and very quickly you learn from people that you're working with, and you realise that whatever you're portraying on screen, people think that's you. So when people put words in your mouth or make you do things that you're not comfortable with, if you stand up to that, I recognised very quickly that I was being a difficult woman, and I voted with my feet and I left. So it does happen. But I think that happens in every industry, and it's only when women share their experiences. I think Me Too was a brilliant way for other women to see what's happened. So you think, well, if that happened to me, what would I do? And forewarned is forearmed.
But when you saw Me Too unfold over the last sort of year or 18 months, was that something you recognised within your own industry?
From a professional point of view, no, I didn't have. I've not had anything like that at work. From being a woman. I've had,
Generally, you mean?
Someone putting their phone on the floor, filming up my skirt at a friend's party, thinking that was acceptable. And, what? Okay. And since Me Too and since hearing other people's stories, and that when I look back at that, it's like, I should have just got my heels and stamped on that phone. No one's got a right to film up my skirt, whoever they are. So, but then you watch, and I think John Oliver's another great comedian I watch that has kind of a funny political show in the States, and he showed the same thing was happening 20 years ago, exactly the same thing, and what's changed? So you have to keep fighting, you have to keep highlighting it. And
what about Strictly? I mean, do you think that opened up a whole new world of sexism in the way people saw you?
I have no idea. I mean, I couldn't.
Because that was the show that really propelled you, wasn't it?
I guess. I guess so. Because that was I think it was 5 years ago. It was 2013. But I mean, with this, you go from nowhere, and over the years your profile changes. So I can't tell. I can't tell what I would be like if Strictly wasn't there. And you only ever have an experience as a woman, so I can't compare to what my experience would be if I was a man.
But your experience and the coverage of that and the way you were portrayed in the newspapers during it.
I didn't really see. I mean, now is interesting because now I can be in 3 different papers, and when you read about yourself, you're always, women are flaunting their curves, or they're showing off this, or they're whatever, and it's like, I'm just wearing a dress, and I can be in 3 papers online in a day just for wearing a dress on Countdown, and it has been quite illuminating in this whole big, horrible anti-Semitism saga, not been picked up anywhere. So it's quite highlighting how people see women and how they want to see them.
Do you think they don't take you seriously?
I think a lot of people have been surprised by, like, oh, I thought you were just the woman off Countdown, and they don't expect you to have opinions, and when you do, I mean, the Sarah Conference Against Anti-Semitism highlighted misogyny because female MPs get so much more abuse for being women at the same time, and I've got friends. Natasha Devon is an amazing mental health campaigner. Dr. Emily Grossman is an amazing STEM ambassador for women, and when they talk about mental health or getting girls involved or whatever, they've had rape threats and rape and death threats. That's insane. That's absolutely insane, and that is a uniquely female. That wouldn't happen to a guy.
The treatment you've had as a result of all this would put a lot of people off. It'd make them run and shut up.
Yeah, it would.
It's obviously had the opposite impact on you.
Yeah.
So where do you think this is taking you? I mean, you said the thing you've learned from Trump is doing things for yourself. I mean, do you ever think about standing up and going into some sort of campaigning or politics or in a more formal way?
I mean, I think I did an event it was trying to encourage school kids to think about politics and voting and getting more women in. And the thing about it is that you don't have to go into politics to have an impact on your community, your people, have an impact in politics, because people vote on stuff and campaigns and whatever you get online. That makes a difference, and that makes a difference to policymakers. So I don't intend to get into politics in any sense, but I won't shut up just because people abuse me. That's not going to happen. Good luck to them. I
ask everybody on this podcast if they've got a particularly difficult to achieve way of changing the world, sort of a one they know is hard to deliver. Mm-hmm. Do you have a sort of a world according to Rachel new thing you'd like to do?
I guess combat the rise in conspiracy theories. It's fake news. It's conspiratorial thinking. It goes against my being as a mathematician. I need evidence to believe things. I'm an atheist. Question stuff. I mean, and it's so difficult in this day and age. There's no big answer to it, but it's going to take everybody. It takes a community. We all have to recognise when something's wrong and fight against it. If we lose truth, then what is left? I mean, that's what society's founded on. And as soon as that's gone, then you can say anything, do anything, and that's fine. And we need to keep sight of the balance between freedom of speech and freedom to abuse and freedom to lie. There's a balance to be drawn, and it's very, very complicated, and I'm definitely not going to be the one that's going to solve that. But
Rachel Riley, thank you very much indeed for sharing your ways to change the world.